welcome to Inside the Album. I'm Don Seckler. That's Tommy Hilkin. How's it going today, Tom?
Don, real good. How you doing?
Good. Just want to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Inside the Album. It's a podcast where we pick one classic rock and roll album and talk about all the stories behind the recording of that album and what was going on. And hopefully we, overturn some myths and let you know the real story about the recording of these great records.
Yeah.
So today we are going to dive into London Calling by The Clash. So
there you go.
Yeah, great. One of my all-time favorite albums. And this one is a double album. So we're not going to do the whole thing, but we're going to kind of pick and choose the songs that, we kind of like and we have some information for. So we'll walk through those and give you kind of a picture of what was going on with the band at the time. And check out www.insidethealbum.com. That's where you can see all of the episodes. You can listen to any episode from the entire series, where this is our 16th episode, I believe. So we have a lot to go back and listen to if you are just trying to get caught up.
Well, you think about it, Don. We have data and statistics. How crazy is that?
We do. We actually have a lot of data. We're actually listened to, Tom, in 49 countries with almost 3,000 downloads, which is listens in podcast speak. So
I heard we're killing in Cambodia. I don't
know. We're very popular in Eastern Europe, and so we'd like to give a shout out to everybody in Bosnia.
Yeah. I don't speak Bosnian, but we're okay.
Is that even still a country? I don't even know if that is or not.
Nice try. You probably offended someone. But
probably. We'll get an email, or we'll get canceled.
Culture canceled
in
Bosnia.
So let's talk about something positive, and that's the charity we're working with, along with Inside the Album. Tell us all about it.
Well, thanks, Don. It's Music for Mark. The reason we get together is really to raise awareness of what we're doing. Music for Mark is our foundation, where we bring musical lessons and musical instruments to kids who might not be able to get their hands on a guitar or a keyboard, things like that. We just want to keep the music going in the world. So musicformark.com, help us bring music to kids who will bring music to the world.
Yes. And if you have any used or instruments laying around in your house that have never been touched, let us know. We'd be happy to take that off your hands, help you clean up your house, and help us move forward our mission of bringing music to the world.
Beautiful.
So, Tom, it's time for the always exciting Inside the Album shout out.
Oh. I didn't realize that. All right, here we go. I'm sitting tight.
So this week we're going to give our Inside the Album shout out to Alex Baelish. So Alex is a friend of ours that we know from our business circles here in New Jersey.
Wow.
But Alex also has his own podcast. And
yes, he does.
Yeah, that podcast is called Field to Screen. And it is all about movies about sports. So it's very interesting. I'd love you guys to check it out. Alex actually had me and our friend Walt Blau, who does the Walt's Kitchen Table podcast. Walt and I were both on Alex's podcast talking about the movie Rounders, which is a poker movie. So Alex said to me, hey, do you want to do an episode? And I said, well, can we do it about poker? Because I don't know if you consider that a sport, but I do. So, he was okay with it. So we jumped on there. It was a great episode. And I think I think that should be airing soon. So check out Field to Screen podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
And I, unlike you, the reason I hang out with Alex is he knows how to restart a heart and give CPR. So I keep him
That's your criteria these days for companions? People who can restart a heart?
Yeah, he's in my speed dial.
That's very proactive of you.
My 911 goes right to Alex.
Nice. That's a good call. Good call. All right, so let's talk about London Calling. It's by The Clash, legendary band. This album, to me, is their finest work. I love all the Clash work. I love the stuff that the guys in the Clash did after the Clash. I love Big Audio Dynamite. I love Joe Strummer with the Mescaleros, and just great stuff. So let's talk about the band. I don't know, people probably know Joe Strummer. He's the lead vocalist for most of the songs, rhythm guitar. You've got Mick Jones, who was the lead guitarist, did some vocals. Paul Simonon on bass, backing vocals, and he actually does lead vocals on The Guns of Brixton, which is a song on London Calling. And then Topper Headon is the drummer for The Clash. The album was released in early 1980, in January 1980 in the US, but in December of 79 in the UK. So a lot of media outlets have called it the one of the best albums of the 80s, and some people dispute that because they say it was out in the last month of 79 in the UK. Ugh. So picky, but I wouldn't get to that kind of pickiness. I think it's an 80s album, and I do agree that it is one of the great ones of the 80s.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So they recorded in London. They're British guys, well, maybe not so obviously, but they are British. And it was recorded in London during August, September, and November of 1979. So at the time on the charts, there was a lot of interesting stuff going on in the rock world. We had The Wall by Pink Floyd. Again, we've talked about Pink Floyd over and over again as we love them. But The Wall, just a dominant album that had, hit after hit after hit. Rock radio was flooded with The Wall.
Sure.
You had The Long Run by the Eagles, which I know we've mentioned that before. Another album with tons and tons of popular rock songs.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting other couple of albums that were popular in that year, 1980, was In the Heat of the Night by Pat Benatar, which, a little bit more mainstream rock. The Clash is a little bit more punkier, but still a big album. Pat Benatar was one of the big stars of the early 80s.
Oh, I'll say.
Yeah. And then, and girls used to dress like Pat Benatar, right? You used to see a lot of Pat Benatars walking around.
Not just girls. Not just girls.
You had a little Pat Benatar phase that you went through?
Yeah, I just spiked my hair a little bit. That's all.
Nice. And then the other album, which we are definitely going to cover, was the first Pretenders album that came out in 1980. So amazing record. So a lot of good stuff out there at the time. I don't know that this album got less visibility because of those things, but it wasn't, it wasn't I don't think it was like the mainstay that some of these other albums, or it didn't have the visibility initially that a lot of these albums had.
What's interesting about that point, and I was thinking about it, right, of how big this album could have been, should have been. They were always labeled as punk rockers.
Right.
And punk was starting to fade kind of sort of a little bit. And so that's one of the things, this is another punk band, and it's,
and this album is less punk than their first two, I think. There's still some punk edge to it, but part of punk is diversity and kind of a bunch of different types of music. So they've got some, there's some reggae on here. There's some ska. So there's all these things that are kind of punk adjacent.
Yep.
And they expanded out with a little bit of different flavor on these things. They even did some rockabilly type stuff on here, and we'll get into that. So it's a lot. It's not like a Ramones or a Sex Pistols record at all. Those guys were boom, 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 hardcore. This is punk. We're sticking to it. But the Clash always covered a lot of different styles. Even on their punk records, there was a lot of variety. So this one actually sold 5 million copies. And when it opened, it really did have a lot of widespread critical acclaim. So it was popular with the critics when it first came out, which is interesting. A lot of times you see these albums that were not thought of so great when they were first released, and then 20, 30 years down the road, they become critics' darlings kind of thing. But this is one album that really was liked by the critics right off the bat.
Very interesting though. You're talking to you and I, like I always say, it's an album we all had in our, milk crates, but 5 million copies.
That's it. Yeah.
That's not, yeah, there's something there.
I mean, yeah, still a hit record, but it was, it wasn't like an Elton John record where it was going to be bought by everybody. So it was still, I think, and it was that kind of punk, thing that people thought it was a punk, and that was a little scary to people at the time.
Very, very interesting. The dynamic, now that I think about it, they fell right in between punk and new wave.
Right. Yeah. They kind of bridged the gap a little bit. They never really did new wave, but like I said, they did gap.
They fell in between the progression between punk and new wave.
Right.
Kind of got lost in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, and as a band, they, like I said, on here, we'll hear it when we play these songs, they explored a lot of different types of music. So,
great stuff.
it was just an awesome record. It was ranked number 8 on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. So that's pretty impressive. Number 8. Think about that. Yeah,
I get it. You just said number 8, and so interesting. I'm trying to think about it in 1980 why albums wouldn't sell. Really, was it?
Well, I think it was because of I think it was mostly because of the punk thing. So everybody, if people were not into punk, they were scared by punk, they might stay away from this. We talked about how crazy the lyrics were on those Ramones, on that Ramones record, which was just, a year or two before this. And then this album is also inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. So again, it does get its rightful due in terms of these types of rankings and people, how they look at the album now. It was their third record. So they had the first 2 records. The first one was really punky. The second one, a lot less. This one, even more less. But this one was a double. So it was kind of against the grain, which is kind of a punk thing to do. But there's 19 songs on this record, and they're all great songs. And, it's just an amazing double album.
Beautiful. I look forward to hearing it.
Yes. So let's talk about the cover. The cover's kind of cool. It's got this iconic shot of Paul Simonon smashing his bass, and he was actually smashing the bass at the Palladium in New York City. And the picture was taken on September 20th of 1979. So the reason he's smashing the bass is because he had frustration because the bouncers at the concert were not letting people stand up.
Yeah.
So, back in the day, it wasn't like it is today. A lot of it was like controlling the rock and roll crowd, trying to keep them from getting too crazy. Yeah. And again, these guys are a punk band. And so these venues were, had seen what happened at some of the punk shows. And so they were trying to keep control of the situation.
Well, the Palladium was a theater, so it wasn't really cut out for punk shows.
Right.
There wasn't much room for a mosh pit.
Right. So when you get into those situations, they're trying to just keep people from smashing stuff and breaking things, I guess.
Yeah.
But interesting thing about the picture, and you can see it here, it's not super in focus. And so the photographer didn't want to use it because it was a blurry shot. She thought they thought it was a very, not a great shot and didn't want to use it, but the band loved it. So they went ahead and did it. And then you can see the font and the London Calling words here. That's a tribute to Elvis Presley, because that's you may know that's, one of the covers of Elvis's album had that same kind of, text and font on it. So interesting story about the cover of the album. The band was at a period where they had some success, and now they were trying to change things up a little bit. So they went through change in management, and there was this period of time where Joe Strummer and Mick Jones, who were the main songwriters, just had writer's block. So these guys had not written a song in a year, which is crazy. Usually when you see these bands at their peak, they're constantly churning out songs and writing all the time. And these guys were like, they came to like a loggerhead where they were like, we got to figure out how to get past this.
Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a super amount of pressure because they were having, getting some traction, gaining in the world and starting to get some visibility.
And under contract.
Yeah, and so all these issues came into play, and so they
Mhm.
decided to do some closed practices. So they used to, they didn't let anybody in the practice. So sometimes you had the bands, and you get these hangers on who are there, and girlfriends, and all that stuff, and it gets into this party scene a lot of the time. So they decided to close everybody out. We're going to go ahead and just work on covers. So they figured this will kind of stoke the fires, and they didn't have to worry about the reaction from the people hanging around with them at the time. They didn't want to have to get their approval. So they locked out everybody and started doing covers of rockabilly, old rock and roll, old R&B, some reggae stuff. And
Nice.
so they didn't have to worry about those people's reactions, and it did what they wanted it to. It kind of helped them, kind of restoke those songwriting fires.
Yeah, it's the spark. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
found their spark.
Yeah,
Perfect.
so good move. And the good thing about this album is that, like we were saying before, yeah, there's a bit of punk on it, but it reflects the band's growing interest in different styles beyond punk. So, like I said before, you got reggae, you've got rockabilly, you've got ska on there. There's some New Orleans R&B influences, some lounge jazz, and even like some harder rock. So, you can hear all these different flavors on this album. That's one of my favorite things about it is it's not, while I love like the Ramones where every song is kind of the same, one,
Yeah.
two, three, four, but this every song has a different feel and a different texture, but they're all so good.
Yeah, the songs have more than 3 chords.
Yeah. A lot of times they do. So
There you go.
they also, the other thing was, as they're doing this kind of jamming to these cover songs, they all started to see that Topper Headon, the drummer, could actually play a lot of different styles, more beyond the straight ahead punk, which is just the 1, 2, 3, 4. So they got into leveraging that and were able to explore these other styles, which made a big difference in the song's choices.
Nice.
All right, so let's start it off, and we're going to start off with the title track and take a listen to this. And this one is it's the title track, so it's London Calling.
Hey, all right.
You boys and girls, London calling. Now don't look to us. Phony Beatlemania has bitten the dust. London calling. See, we ain't got no swing except for the rain and the truncheon thing. The ice age is coming, the sun's zooming in. Meltdown expected, the wheat is going thin. Engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river to the imitation zone.
So I think this song, this is one of my favorites of all time. I don't know if you saw this or remember this, but when Joe Strummer died, they had on the Grammys, they did a tribute. I think it was Springsteen, Dave Grohl. Who else? It might have been Elvis Costello. I forget who else. I think there was one other person who did this.
I didn't see it.
Really, really good version of it. So you could YouTube that and check it out. But originally this song was called Ice Age. Joe Strummer wrote it. The lyrics were a little bit different in his first version, but he got into this whole, it's this whole apocalyptic type of feel to it. And it's detailing a lot of the ways that the world could end, coming of the Ice Age, starvation, war. Probably the song that a lot of people best know the Clash for. It's kind of lashing out against injustice, rebelling against the establishment. And so this is punk rock, right? It's just in your face. It's hardcore. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. but such a good song.
Great song. Absolutely.
Yeah, so the title came from the BBC World Service's radio station identification. So this was a station that the BBC used to broadcast outside of England during World War II.
Wow.
Joe Strummer was living in Germany with his parents when he heard it. And they used to say, "This is London calling." And, that was it was one of these old timey radio broadcasts, just like you see in the movies. This is London calling. So that's where that whole thing came from. And then at the very end of the song, there's kind of this beeping. It sounds like SOS in Morse code, and that's what it is. And so that's Mick Jones. He made those sounds with one of his guitar pickups. I don't know exactly how he did it, but he might have been, like touching the strings to the pickups or something like that. But that was a very conscious thing to put that kind of SOS into the end of the song there.
Oh, it's a great sound. Something you'll never forget.
Yeah, such a good one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's take a listen to track number 2. This one is a cover song, and it's called Brand New Cadillac. And again, here you're going to get hit right in the face with the diversity of this album right off. So you got that punk track coming in with London Calling, and now we get this. So cool. I love this one.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
Love it, right?
Oh, that's great.
So here's one that, this is an old 1959 rockabilly song by Vince Taylor. Yeah, it's 100% rockabilly. I mean, they kind of edged it up a little bit with the distorted guitar in the background there, and amazing. So it's actually the first song they recorded for this record.
Every song should have a guitar riff like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I could live for like my entire life just listening to riffs like that.
It makes me smile. But you think about these bands and the people that they heard. It came to mind Johnny Rivers, the great Johnny Rivers. Secret Agent Man, things like that. Boom, boom, boom. Just came to mind and made me smile. Because Johnny Rivers, killer guitar player with the rockabilly and just great stuff.
Well, and again, it's always about influences. So these guys are dipping back to when they were kids and the stuff they like to listen to. It's just like today, you'll go out and see some of the newer rock bands or hard rock metal bands. They cover Metallica songs, the punk bands out there, they cover Green Day. So everybody dips back to their influences, and that's where a lot of this stuff comes from.
The guy that carried a lot of people and just with those riffs was Carl Perkins.
Oh, yeah.
I just love it.
I mean, Carl Perkins is like the riff originator pretty much, right?
When you think about it, that riff that you hear there, somewhere Carl Perkins probably played it.
Right. And, that's, you hear a lot of those references, especially in punk music too, where people are going back to Carl Perkins. They're going back to Little Richard. They're going back to even Johnny Cash, those
Elvis.
Originators, Elvis, right? All those guys from the 50s who were kind of the originators of rock and roll.
Oh.
And, sometimes it's a simple song, but you can take it and spin it a little bit and really kind of re-energize it. And it's great.
I love it all. I mean, to me, it's just, if you keep playing it like that, the guitar licks in it, the twanging, as they said, Dwayne Eddy back in the day.
Eddy, sure. Yeah.
The twanging guitar, I love everything about it.
Yeah. So great. All right, so let's take a listen to, we're doing the first three right in a row here. This one is number 3, and this is called Jimmy Jazz. Totally different sound now, right? So you go through the first 3 songs, it's so different, you know? So diversity.
Police walked in for Jimmy Jazz. I said he ain't here, but he sure went past. Oh, you're looking for Jimmy Jazz. Yeah, they said, strapped to my cigar for Jimmy Dread. Cut off his ears and chop off his head. Police come look for Jimmy Jazz, 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 Jazz. So they're gonna take the message across the town, maybe put it down somewhere over the outside.
It's so good, right?
All day long.
Jimmy Jazz, Jazz.
So again, it's a little, you know, it's a little punked up right here, but still, it's still reserved, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So again, you know, it's jazz. I mean, these guys are, you know, so when you say, like, a lot of times the rap is, well, punk musicians can't play, but not everybody's Sid Vicious, you know. These guys actually have some chops, and this song, to me, I love it. Even though I'm not a huge jazz fan at all, but I love this song a lot. My favorite thing in it, at the end, as he's going through and it's cycling out, he's saying J-A-Z-Z. Because the British Z, you know.
ZZ.
ZZ.
Yeah, you know what you were just saying about the guitar players and learning, and you know, I think a whole new generation of people were labeled punk, but very, very talented people. You know, like I was mentioning earlier, the 3 chords and Johnny Ramone, you know,
Right.
things like that. These guys knew how to play instruments.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, you can hear it. And so right off the bat, again, it's just such a diversity. Those first 3 songs are so unique, each one of them. And so it's great to see that on one record. All right. So
you can feel the influence. You think about it right there, you know, even the Beatles come to mind, you know?
Yeah, a little bit, right? You can feel that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got that kind of beat that you hear a lot of the Paul McCartney songs, I think.
It's always McCartney. So yes.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to skip ahead now. We're going to jump up to track number 5. And this one, another different style of music here. We're going to go to Rudy Can't Fail.
Sing, Michael, sing. On the roof of the 19th bird. We hear it say, and you get the rude and a reckless, don't you be so crude and a feckless, even chicken brew for breakfast. Rudy can't fail. We reply. I know that my life make you nervous, but I tell you I can't live in service like a doctor born for a purpose. Rudy can't fail. Okay. I went to the market to realize my soul. What I need, I just don't have. Birthday good and me. West Street till I heard. Rudy can't fail. First you must cure your temper.
So this song, you know, again, a whole different style here. This one's like a ska, I guess you would classify it as, but it's got a little reggae in there too. So a Rudy or a rude boy is a term for the first English generation born to Jamaican parents who had emigrated from Jamaica to England. So they were called the Jam English generation. And the rude boys were often looked down on as being irresponsible because they were Jamaican and probably black.
There you go.
So this is one of the many songs on London Calling that evolve out of a pure jamming in the studio. So when they're in there doing that, we talked about before where they're jamming on those covers and stuff like that.
Covers, yep.
This is where that grew out of. So the studio vibe really made a difference on this record and allowed them to explore.
Well, you can see where they were going with it, but it's like, I know a cat named Way Out Willie.
Yeah, right.
It's Willie and the Hand Jive.
Yeah, it's similar, right?
Oh, yeah. It's rock and roll, dude. Like we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Everything is similar if you break it down.
So one of the roadies said that they were taking a very casual approach to this. They weren't really, even though, they wanted to get a record out and everything, they were trying to make this loose. So they would get in there, jam a little bit in the morning, go out, play some football, aka soccer, for those of us here in the States. Then they'd come back and play some more. Then they'd go out and have a few beers and come back and jam again. So it was a very loose thing. And the roadie, Barry Glare, actually said that he thought it helped to get that very relaxed, casual, and uplifting feel on tracks like this one. So that is interesting, I thought.
That's a great tune.
Yeah. And so there's also kind of a mix of stuff in here. So you've got ska, which we heard, which is that kind of upbeat, happy, bump, ba-dum, ba-ba, and with a little bit of the horn type sound there. Plus, yeah. Plus,
I like it.
Plus, Mick Jones is kind of playing a little bit like Bo Diddley, like that choppy kind of sound, and these guys had toured. Yeah. And they had toured with Bo Diddley the year before this in the US. So, that along with the heavy ska bass line and the way they're playing the drums all comes together in this kind of what you would look at maybe as a mishmash, but it works.
Dude, what a great show. I never knew that. Dude, Bo Diddley and the Clash would be a nice night.
They opened for Bo Diddley right before this record. Wow. So that was, I don't know if it was their first trip to the US. It might have been, but that's where they got the inspiration for the Elvis Presley cover. And so it being in the US gave them that kind of inspiration for some of these songs.
God bless Bo Diddley.
Yeah. So good, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's take a listen to number 6. This one is Spanish Bombs. Again, kind of upbeat, right?
Spanish songs in Andalusia, the shooting sides in the days of 39. Oh, please leave the Vendana open. Federico lockers, dead and gone. Bullet holes in the cemetery wall. The black car, the Guardian of the beer. Spanish bombs on the Costa Rica are dying in on the DC-10 tonight. Spanish bombs, you got the quiero y bonito. Yo te quiero, oh my God, a song. Spanish bombs, yo te quiero y bonito. Yo te quiero, oh my God, a song. Spanish weeks in my disco casino. The freedom fighters died up on the hill. They sang the red flag, they wore the black one. After they died it was Mockingbird Hill. Back from the buses, went up in flashes, Irish too.
So the story of this song is that Joe Strummer was driving home late one night from the studio when he heard a report about a hotel on the Costa Brava in Spain getting bombed by Basque terrorists.
Yeah.
So even though this is a happy, peppy song, it's about a terrorist bombing, which is crazy.
Yeah. Stuff to rhyme terrorist.
Yeah.
But you know what? I want to throw something in here about the Clash that I you realize us here in America, when we used to hear the British bands, most of them would lose their accent, right? Somehow, some way. They still sing with a thick accent, the Clash.
Yeah. Joe Strummer had it, and that it never went away. You know, he
Yeah.
always had that accent. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. The other interesting thing about him singing on this is that all that Spanish stuff is gibberish. So
We've
so
all
it,
been there.
it doesn't mean anything, and it's, you know, so it's like kind of half. It's yo quiero o mi corazón, which doesn't make any sense. So, you know, he does, even though he's got that English accent, he's faking some Spanish here just to be lyrical and move the song forward.
Hey, mi amigo.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what it's like, right?
Hey, where do we go? Hey, I'm on a road.
There you go.
There we go. I'm a songwriter, damn it.
There you go. Change in profession.
Yeah, again.
All right, so let's move on. We're going to take a listen now to, this is track number 8. It is Lost in the Supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
In the supermarket, I can no longer shop happily. I came in here for a special offer, guaranteed personality. I wasn't born so much as I fell out. Nobody seemed to notice me. We had a hedge back home in the suburb, over which I never could see. I heard the people who live on the ceiling scream and fight scarily. Hearing that noise was my first ever feeling. That's how it's been all around me. I'm all lost in the supermarket. I can no longer shop happily. I came in here for a special offer, a guaranteed personality. I'm all tuned in. I see all.
So this song, Joe Strummer wrote it. And he wrote the lyrics imagining Mick Jones' life growing up in a basement with his mother and grandmother. So, so interesting song. Also, the drums are kind of interesting on this. Topper Headon had seen the blues guitarist Taj Mahal play, and his drummer was playing a lot of the normal snare beats, which is usually the 1, 2, 3, 4. He was playing those on the floor tom. So if you listen to this song closely, you can hear that in there. The floor tom is it's more of a boom, 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 but that's the 1, 2, 3, 4 that you're getting for most of the song. So it was a one-off thing that he kind of, borrowed or stole from Taj Mahal.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, this song.
Yeah, I love it.
Real good. Yeah, real enjoyable.
Joe Strummer also wrote or started to write this song on the back of a package for guitar strings. So if you buy a package of guitar strings, each string has its little paper envelope that it's inside of. I don't know if people know that. So there's usually six envelopes in a package of guitar strings, and it's a paper. It's not coated or anything, so it's easy to write on. So being a guitar player, he's got a million guitar string packages and just started writing those lyrics right on the back of that Ernie Ball custom gauge strings package. So let's take a listen to track number 9. This one is Clamp Down. A little more punky now. But you can definitely hear the 80s, right? In here?
Oh, yeah.
So this one is, this is another punk song on the album, obviously, and started off as an instrumental track called "Working and Waiting." So the whole kind of theme of this song is don't let them, shut you down, clamp down, and get in line, and go ahead and do your own thing, which is a very punk rock attitude, right?
Was the word new wave in there? I thought I heard it. I was like,
I don't know.
It was something I heard. Like, it seems like they want us to be the new wave. It's something I thought I heard.
That would be interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the exact lyrics, but it would be ahead of the time, right? Because new wave really hadn't started in 1980 yet.
It was coming.
Yeah, but it was coming.
But you listen musically, like we always say, if you sit back and you listen musically to this song, what they're playing, it's amazing. There's a lot going on in this song musically.
Yeah, it's amazing. So
great stuff. Great
another good song. And this is another one, when you hear people cover The Clash, this is one that always gets covered. So it's a popular song with other bands as well. All right, so let's move along here. We're gonna jump forward just one, go to number 10. This one is The Guns of Brixton.
Like that.
So good. And this is very reggae influenced.
When they kick at your front door, how you gonna come? With your hands on your head or on the trigger of your gun. When the law break in, how you gonna go? Shot down on the pavement or waiting in death row. You can crush us, you can bruise us, but you'll have to answer to. The money feels good and your life you like it well, but surely your time will come, as in heaven as in hell.
So this one, obviously heavy reggae influence, and it's actually based on a character from the 1972 movie The Harder They Come, which is Jimmy Cliff, reggae guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of imagining him living in South Brixton in London, in the neighborhood of South Brixton. So the interesting thing about this is it's Paul Simonon singing. He wrote the song, and he said it was a big moment for him. The thing he didn't realize was that the songwriters get paid all the money. He said, you don't get paid for designing record sleeves and clothes, so I better write a song.
Yeah, it's a great idea if you want to make some money.
Yeah, and again, this is another one that, if you hear Clash covers, this is one that gets covered fairly frequently. Just a very, very popular song.
Yeah, a lot of these songs, I always think of other artists, but I was really into Ian Dory and the Blockheads.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that boom boom. Ian Dory is a strange cat. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that music, a lot of punk music is really influenced by reggae. It's definitely in their background. Like my first exposure to reggae, I think, was probably in the 70s when the Stones were playing with like Peter Tosh and stuff like that. Like Mick Jagger recorded a song with him, and
Walk and Don't Look Back.
Yeah. So that
Great
stuff is really influenced, especially the 70s. I think 70s and 80s started to really influence a lot of these bands.
And Peter Tosh makes it to the podcast. There you go. Great song.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive into track number 12. This one is Death or Glory. This is a Joe Strummer song. So this song, it's Joe Strummer kind of looking back at his life and acknowledging complications and responsibilities of adulthood. But he originally wrote this on the piano. And so when they first wrote it, it was a much slower pace. And it was more of kind of a reflective ballad. So it was that looking back on your life kind of thing, but on piano. The main reason they sped it up was because it was very similar to As Time Goes By, the song from Casablanca.
Sure.
So, you take that and you put it on guitars and you speed it up, and now you've got a rock song, It's just amazing how that works.
Yeah, it's true though, right? Like we always say, everything goes back to something. Everything goes back to something. It's not a big deal as much a lot of people make it. Very hard to be original with millions and millions of songs being written.
Sure. But it's what you do. It's how you adapt those things and how you modify them. And you look at bands that had like where their only hits were cover songs. Were they different? Were they the same? Sometimes they were exactly the same, but it was different singer, maybe different instruments, but the song wasn't changed that much. And sometimes it can be as popular as the previous version,
Well, it just made me think, once bitten, twice shy, right? That's
a perfect example, right?
Yeah. It became such a huge hit, and Mott the Hoople did it,
Right.
And Mott the Hoople makes the podcast. I'm so glad to be the old guy. I really
but do you know who the recorded the second version was by? I know.
White something.
Great White.
Great White. There you go.
I
knew it. Yeah.
So a lot of those 80s bands, they had Come On Feel the Noise by Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot had all cover hits. I don't even know if they had any original hits, did they?
Don't know. I told you. Personally, I'm floating through this. I missed the 80s, but go ahead anyway.
All right. So let's wrap it up. We're going to skip a bunch here. I wish we had time to go through every one of these songs, but we would have a 3-hour podcast. So
this has been fun, man. It really has.
Yeah. I just love this record. So we're going to jump ahead to the album Closer, which may be the most well-known trash, the most well-known Clash song of all time.
Well, it is. Yeah.
And it's Train in Vain.
Yeah. Great tune.
So this song is written by Mick Jones, the guitar player, and he sings it. So you hear the different voice there on the vocals. And it looks like the lyrics are a reference to the end of his relationship at the time with a woman named Viv Albertine.
Oh, Viv.
So the title of the song comes from the train rhythm of the drums and everything. And then they also have that reference to Tammy Wynette's 1975 hit single, Stand By Your Man. So they kind of combined a couple different things here for a really, really popular song. It was their first US top 40 hit, and they only had one more after this, which was Rock the Casbah in 1982.
Wow.
Which is when the Clash then was out touring with The Who in the US, and then that was kind of the end of the Clash after that, I think.
Yes, it was.
So, great song. But the interesting thing about this was it wasn't listed on the album in the original pressings because they recorded it so late that they had already printed up the record jackets. Oh, wow. So they released it as a single, and it rose to number 23 on the Hot 100 in America, making it their, like I said before, their biggest hits so far. And it's very poppy compared to the rest of the album. So that kind of led to this myth that the Clash didn't want to put it on the album because they were embarrassed by it, because it was too poppy, which is just bullshit. The real answer was just that they were already in production on the artwork and decided to add the song at the end. So
it's all rumors, I tell you.
All rumors. So we like to bust those myths. That's a tongue twister.
Bust those myths.
My diction is not so good today.
And diction will certainly become an outtake. Thank you.
All right. So that's London Calling.
Yay.
I hope you enjoyed it. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite records. It's right there behind me, always here, close by, next to my turntable.
That's beautiful.
So thank you everybody for listening and watching. Yeah. Check us out. Review us on Apple Podcasts if you can. Give us 5 stars. We don't want any of these 2-star reviews. Just 5 stars. That's all we accept.
If I see a 2-star,
there's going to be trouble.
Don't forget, we're New Jersey guys.
Yeah. If we see a 2-star review, we're going to do like ABBA records or something.
But you know what? I'll take it this way. If it's a 2-star review, there's 1 star for you, 1 for me.
There you go. Good. Everybody's happy, right?
We're stars. No matter what you put there, we're stars. Don, this was great, man. Good to be with you today.
Yeah, you too. And next week, we're going to dive into a little bit of David Bowie. And this was a real hard choice for me because there's 2 records I really, really love by Bowie. Yeah. I was thinking about Hunky Dory, which we may do down the road, but we're gonna start it off with Ziggy Stardust. Thank you. This is gonna be thank you. You don't like Hunky Dory?
I love them both. I'm a big fan of Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah, to me Ziggy Stardust is the Bowie album, and I love even his later work and stuff. But that's just the all-time great album. Dude. So thanks for listening. Catch us next week. YouTube for video, everywhere else for audio. InsideTheAlbum.com. Check it out, and we'll see you next week.